All right, so chapter 11. So first off, this is my first week using my um, iPad. Last week I didn't have a video for you because my camera situation kind of got corrupted, and so I'm just gonna give her a shot and use the iPad and see what happens out of that. So, with that said, chapter 11. Good, quick, easy chapter for us this week. Really enjoyed it because it really talked about some issues that I see as a police chief. Kind of moving around and going to different agencies, I see this interoperability issue and this issue of you know different types of responses for agencies coming up all the time. So the first thing that we hear about is those stories of erroneous information getting out there to police officers. I think probably the best story that I love telling to new recruits is when I was a young officer. I pulled over a bus, and my dispatcher, I called in the plate, and my dispatcher told me it was a stolen bus. And so we approached the bus like it was a stolen bus, possibly terrorists. We didn't know what was going on, and it turns out there was a partial plate number hit, and the dispatcher read it wrong. So we got this bad information from her, and should have handled the situation completely differently, but the information we got was bad. And so we got to be careful about that when we're dealing with this technology age. We got to make sure that we are doing hand checks on warrants. We got to make sure that we are checking things out. And so that also goes back to interoperability. And so the book, let me tell you what interoperability. So the book goes into saying that it is the process of connecting different agencies or units with agencies using communications technology. And so we are seeing this big time. When we had our radios, when I showed you our radio system that we have here at our college, I talked about those, multiple states, or that big statewide radio that people are using, and some of the problems I saw with it. But that was all founded on this interoperability platform. We all need to be able to talk to each other. We all need to be able to communicate with each other. But more so than just the radios, take that out and expand it into systems. And so as recently, I said as recently as '98, and you would have thought that this would be fixed. But as recently as '98, they talk about a story in our book where the INS, the federal government, the INS, Immigration Naturalization Services, captured a serial killer. And instead of putting him in jail for being a serial killer, they ran his prints, nothing came back, and they kick him loose to Mexico. And he comes back and kills at least 4 more people. Why did that happen? Because the two systems were not married together. And so we didn't check it. We didn't know, was it their fault? I don't know. It was '98. You tell me. But in today's day and age, our systems should be able to be compatible with each other and should be able to use interoperability. So why can't agencies? What is preventing us from doing this now? Well, one is just pride, right? I'll tell you another one is the cost factor that we see. We see a lot of agencies. I'll give you a really good example. A local PD that I was at, our agency went with a statewide reporting system, and it wasn't the best system. It was a pretty good system. It was free. And I went to a local agency. I said, "Hey, why don't you guys do this?" And they said, "Man, I wish we would have known about that a year ago, but we just put $80,000 into this system, and we're stuck with it now." So you're not stuck with it. The state system's free. And the agency said, "Yeah, it's free, and we get that, and it's all great. But we sold this to our council. They gave us $80,000, and there's no way that we can go back now." And so that's just another example of, governments, of pride, standing in the way of this interoperability. If this agency would have gone with this free system, we would have been able to see their reports. They could have seen the county's reports. They could have seen reports from all over the state. But because they were, they were solidified, they said, "We already did this. We're not going back." Their officers suffered for that. So that's one of the reasons we see that happen. Let's see. So what should integration look like? Well, the first thing it needs to be able to do is it needs to be able to fulfill the needs of the agency and address the needs of the agency. it has to be able to fill a void that we don't have to sell that. Why do I need that? Why do I need a new report writing system? Well, because the new report writing system will allow you to, automatically upload your reports to the state system, so you don't have to manually do that anymore. Or the new system will allow you to access reports from other agencies. And sometimes that's not a selling point. For a university, for instance, we have some laws that prohibit us from giving out student information, even to other law enforcement agencies. So an interoperable system may, unless they have safeguards in place, that may not assist us. Something else that we need to be able to find in an integrated, or in the integration of a successful interoperable system, is that it needs to have a good foundation of standards and data elements, protocols, policies, application, and hardware systems. This needs to be, you don't want a system that you're always having to work on. I remember the first time I got a license plate reader system in our department. And man, I would spend hours and hours and hours trying to get this thing to work. And it was very frustrating. And if you have multiple agencies doing that, you're going to have problems. So you need to make sure, if you're going to do this interoperable thing, you really need to bring in a good vendor that has a good reputation that will be able to make things work. Interchange and connectability. So let me give you some good examples. The book kind of used an example in this, and I'll use an example in this one. Let's see if I can find it. Here it is. So interchangeability. The book used an example of a soda, but I think that's still too complex. The best example is water. You have bottled water and you have tap water, okay? And it's still water. And yeah, maybe it might taste a little different, and I may not like this one as much. It's water, okay? And so it's interchangeable. I can switch it out. I can switch those two things out, and it doesn't change anything because it's still water. Great example for a police department. A gun, a Glock in particular. My Glock magazines in different models are interchangeable. So our detectives at my department will carry a smaller framed Glock, while the patrol officers carry a larger framed Glock. But the magazine fits either Glock. It's interchangeable. It's still a Glock. It's still the same caliber. It's a little bit different maybe, but it's interchangeable. You can use it with nothing needs to happen. Connectability, a good example of that for us is our ID card readers at our office. So, I have an ID card vendor, okay? So here is my college ID card. This is produced by a vendor that puts a mag strip on it. And so what I want to be able to do is take this ID card and swipe it through a swipe unit. And now this swipe unit is made by a different vendor than this ID card. But if they have connectability, the two communicate and I swipe. Now, connectability really refers to the two being able to work directly. Now, in the ID card world, there's a third-party vendor that bridges that gap. So I got all the information here, I got all the information here, and there's a third-party software vendor that will connect the two. That's not really good connectability because you're using a vendor to bridge that gap. I want this software and this software to communicate with each other to open up that door. So that's what we're talking about with connectability. Then we kind of got into tactical communications and dealing with, I've seen people use patches primarily nowadays with radio communications. That's basically where dispatch can patch one radio type to another radio type and allow two agencies to talk to each other. I don't see that as working very well or being very successful. The two agencies just have different protocols, different ways to communicate, and I've just not seen that be real successful. I'm not saying it won't, but I'm just saying I haven't seen it be successful. We then got into horizontal partnership, horizontal partnerships and vertical partnerships. So the horizontal, it is horizontal. I'm sorry, I couldn't read my own writing. The horizontal partnerships. you're really dealing with a partnership with like 3 agencies. And these are usually close local agencies or federal agencies, but they're kind of agencies on the same level. So that's like when the local sheriff's department creates a drug task force. And we bring, and I'll use that Parkersburg area. That would be like the city of, that'd be like the city of Parkersburg creating a drug task force and having on that task force members from Parkersburg PD, Wood County Sheriff's Department, and another local police department. Let's say Vienna Police Department. Okay, and so those 3 agencies join together and create a task force. They're all kind of the same level. I mean, maybe you got county government in there. They're all kind of local. Whereas with the vertical partnership, they're more than 3 usually, and they're varying agencies. So that is like a marshal's task force. So the marshal's agency says, hey, listen, I'm going to make a bunch of deputy marshals, and I'm going to take a guy from Parkersburg PD, and I'm going to make him a deputy marshal. And he's going to serve on our task force. He's still a Parkersburg police officer, but we're going to give him this task force authority. And then I'm going to take a state trooper from West Virginia State Police. I'm going to make him a task force member. I'm going to put a couple of our deputy marshals on there. And we're making this local task force to go out there and get these fugitives, and so that's what that's talking about. So those are the 2 types of different styles of levels of task force and and agency cooperation. So listen, like I said, pretty basic chapter, pretty short. It should be a good, easy one for you guys to talk about. Use your discussion board to discuss some of the things you've seen within this interoperability situation. I hope you have a great week. We are getting close. We're rounding down the home base. Make sure you contact me if you got any questions. Let me know if I can do anything to help you out to get you through this course. Everyone, for the most part, is doing very, very, very well in this course. You guys are doing a great job. I've really enjoyed your YouTube videos. You're keeping up on your working on your paper. I'm just, and a lot of people are like, well, why are you giving us just these little small tasks? I want to build you up to this paper. I don't want you to get to that end and all of a sudden you got to find 10 references, you got to have an outline, you got to do all these things. I want you to get there and kind of already have a lot of these pieces in place so when you get to that final paper, you just put it all together and there you are. So with that said, have a great week. Let me know if you need anything, and I'll see you next week.